You ever scroll so long your thumb goes numb, and then you realize you haven't seen a person in 10 minutes? Well, not a real one, just shapes. Perfectly formatted opinions, polished outrage, the same joke wearing different clothes, the same comments written with the same rhythm, like everybody went to the same school for being online. And then you spot it. A reply that doesn't make sense. A human who answers instantly, every time, with just enough warmth to feel real, but never enough weirdness to feel alive. A profile with a face that's almost right until you zoom in and your brain whispers, nope. I'll be honest, that's when I close the app. Because I don't like the feeling that I'm talking to a room full of mannequins. And I really don't like the next thought. If the internet is so crowded, why does it feel empty? If you're hearing this, you weren't supposed to. This isn't part of the official story. It's not in the headlines. It's not in the reports. But it exists in fragments, in whispers, in the spaces between what we're told and what's actually true. And once you start listening, really listening, you begin to notice something. The story doesn't quite line up. This is the Tinfoil Diaries. Welcome back to the Tinfoil Diaries. I'm your host, and this is the show where we don't just stare at the static, we listen for the pattern. Tonight we're digging into one of the most unsettling, modern conspiracy-adjacent ideas on the menu, the dead internet theory. The claim that the internet as you know it has been quietly overtaken by bots, automated engagement, and synthetic content, to the point where the human web is becoming background noise. Now, I'm not saying this proves a grand plot, but what I am saying is that there are enough real-world numbers, real-world incentives, and real-world decay to make the theory feel less like a meme and more like a diagnosis. Let's get into it. Dead internet theory doesn't start with a document. It starts with a sensation, a kind of digital uncanny valley. You're looking at your feed and it's smooth, too smooth. Everything's optimized. Everything's catchy. Everything's designed to be shared, reacted to, argued about in exactly the same predictable ways. And the comments? That's where it gets weird. Because the comments are supposed to be the messy part, the human part, the part where someone misspells a word, overshares, derails the thread, makes a joke that only makes sense to 3 people. But lately, a lot of comment sections feel like they're filled with customer service reps from the same company. They don't talk like humans. They talk like templates. And this is where the theory sneaks into your brain. Not as proof, as a question. What if a chunk of what I'm seeing, what I'm reacting to, what I'm believing is a public opinion, isn't people at all? What if it's automation wearing a human mask? Now, I know how that sounds, because we've always had spam. We've always had bots. We've always had astroturfing, which is fake grassroots campaigns meant to look organic. But the scale has changed. And the tools have changed. So the vibe changes too. You start feeling like you're walking through an online city where the lights are on, the billboards are flashing, and the traffic is moving. But the apartments are empty. Let's define it cleanly. Dead internet theory claims that the internet, especially social platforms, has been increasingly dominated by non-human actors, bots, automated accounts, coordinated engagement, and algorithm-driven content, to the point that authentic human interaction is being drowned out. The more conspiratorial version claims this wasn't just an accident of technology and incentives. that it's deliberate. A coordinated effort by governments, corporations, intelligence agencies, or some shadowy coalition to manipulate public perception, keep users isolated, and steer society at scale. And here's the part people argue about: when it started. A lot of dead internet believers point to a window, mid-2010s, when they felt the web shift, when everything became more centralized, more monetized, more algorithmic. But the term itself didn't explode into mainstream awareness until much later. One of the key early spreading points was a post titled "Dead Internet Theory, Most of the Internet is Fake" on Agora Road's Macintosh Cafe in January 2021. And from there, it seeped outward into broader online culture. YouTube explainers, Twitter threads, Reddit debates, until mainstream outlets started talking about it as a phenomenon. So this theory is basically modern folklore. It was born in the same environment it accuses, the internet itself, which is fitting, because if you want to invent a story about a haunted network, you'd probably tell it inside the network. Okay, here's where it stops being just vibes. Bots are not hypothetical. And more importantly, bot traffic isn't a small side problem. Imperva's 2026 Bad Bot Report describes automated traffic as more than 53% of all web traffic in 2025, with human traffic down to 47%. Let me say that again slowly. More than half of the web traffic automated. Now, bots aren't just one thing. Some bots are benign. Search crawlers, monitoring tools, services that keep the internet functioning. But a huge chunk of bot activity is what people mean when they say dead internet. Fake engagement, click fraud, scraping, spam, impersonation, manipulation. And in Imperva's 2025 report, often referenced in dead internet discussions, also highlighted bad bots as a major share of overall traffic, with automation surpassing human activity. So here's the real grounded takeaway. Even if the internet isn't dead, it's heavily automated. And if a system measures reality through engagement metrics, then automated engagement becomes a way to manufacture reality. Because platforms don't rank content based on truth. They rank content based on performance. And performance can be faked. That's the part I can't get past. Not the idea of a secret council, the idea of an ecosystem where unreality is profitable. Now we move from bots clicking to bots creating, because the dead internet theory got a whole new injection of energy once generative AI became mainstream. Suddenly it wasn't just that you might be debating a bot in the comments. Now the post itself might be synthetic. The image might be synthetic. The voiceover might be synthetic. The creator might be a pipeline. And the scary part isn't that AI can generate content. It's that AI can generate content at industrial scale, cheaply, fast, and endlessly. So what happens? People create what are called farms, accounts that post hundreds of times a day, pages that scrape real creators, remix them, and repost them, SEO mills that produce articles that say nothing but rank well, fake review clusters, fake local news sites, fake community pages that look like real neighborhoods. And here's where the theory becomes emotionally persuasive. Because the human brain expects friction. Humans are inconsistent. Humans forget. Humans contradict themselves. Humans have weird timing. Humans are awkward. Synthetic systems are smooth. And when the internet becomes too smooth, It feels fake. Which brings us to a big, quiet amplifier. Search. Google publicly announced updates to target spammy, low-quality content, including policies against scaled content abuse, mass-produced pages made primarily to manipulate rankings, regardless of how they're made. That matters because it's basically an admission that the web is being flooded with unoriginal, manipulated, scaled content, and the platforms have to fight it. Now, to be clear, this doesn't prove a conspiracy, but it does confirm the environment the conspiracy feeds on. A web where content is less about communication and more about extraction, clicks, ad views, affiliate conversions. And once you build a system that rewards scaled output will colonize the feed. Here's the other half of the dead internet feeling that people overlook. The old internet is vanishing. Not dramatically, not with one big explosion, just quietly. Links rot, forums shut down, old blogs disappear, photo hosting sites go dark, communities get wiped by moderation changes or acquisitions or platform strategy. Pew Research looked at this digital decay and reported that 38% of web pages that existed in 2013 were no longer accessible a decade later. So what happens psychologically? When the past disappears, the present feels unanchored. You go looking for the old web, the weird web, the personal web, the handmade web, and you find dead ends. And in those gaps, what's left is often the web of modern day. Centralized platforms, algorithmic feeds, commercial content, scaled output. So the experience becomes the human archive shrinks, the synthetic archive expands, and the internet starts feeling like a mall where every store sells the same product, just with different packaging. That's not a conspiracy. That's entropy and incentives. But it creates the perfect haunted house effect, because when the authentic stuff disappears and the artificial stuff multiplies, you start wondering if you've stepped into a copy of a copy. Now here's where dead internet theory splits into two tracks. Track 1, the grand conspiracy. The idea that a centralized operation, whether it's government, corporate, intelligence, some coalition, deliberately flooded the internet with bots and synthetic content to shape public opinion, manipulate elections, control culture, keep people isolated and angry and easier to steer. Is that proven? No. And I'm not going to sell it like it is. But here's the second track, the one that's less cinematic and more horrifyingly plausible. You don't need a single puppet master. You need competing puppet masters. Because influence operations exist. Marketing manipulation exists. Scams exist. Reputation laundering exists. Engagement farms exist. And the internet makes them cheaper every year. So you get an environment where lots of actors pump out synthetic noise, lots of actors fake consensus, lots of actors manufacture trends, lots of actors impersonate grassroots sentiment. And the results look like coordinated control, even if it's just a swarm of opportunists following the same incentives. Now here's the part that messes with me. When enough of the conversation becomes synthetic, humans adapt. We start writing for the machine. We chase formats. We mimic the tone that gets boosted. We compress our thoughts into performing language. And eventually, real people start sounding like bots. So the bots don't have to replace us. They just have to train us. to talk like them, to think in templates, to optimize ourselves into something legible to the algorithm. And that's when the theory stops being about whether the internet is dead and starts being about whether we're changing to survive inside it. So, is the internet dead? Here's what we can say without lying to ourselves. Verified reality is that bot traffic is enormous, with reporting describing automation as a majority share of web traffic. Imperva's 2026 report describing over 53% automated traffic in 2025. The web is decaying with the disappearance of a major number of older pages. The Pew report showed 38% from 2013 no longer accessible a decade later. Platforms publicly acknowledge large-scale manipulation and scaled low-quality content, so they're updating their spam policies to target it. Google's policies on scaled content abuse and other spam behaviors is one example. Now, the speculation is that it's a single, unified, centrally coordinated project to replace the human internet with bots for total population control. I'll be honest, you don't need the grand plot for things to feel haunted. All you need is a system that rewards scale, rewards manipulation, and measures reality in clicks. So maybe the internet isn't dead. Maybe it's, outnumbered. And the real question isn't, is it dead? It's, how long can a human conversation survive inside an environment that profits from unreality? Next time you scroll and you feel that weird chill, like when you're in a crowded room and nobody's making eye contact, do something small. Something almost rebellious. Say something real. Not optimized, not bait, not designed to go viral. Just human. A messy thought, a strange detail, a real opinion that doesn't fit in a template. And watch what happens. Does it sink instantly? Does it get ignored? Does it get answered by something that feels like it was generated? Because if the dead internet theory has a villain, it's not the bots. It's the quiet surrender. The moment we stop being human online because it doesn't perform. And if you're still listening to me right now, if you're still here, then the internet isn't dead. It's contested territory. If this entry made you suspicious of the comments section, follow or subscribe so you don't lose the trail. And if you can, leave a 5-star rating and a short review. Think of it as punching a clean hole through the algorithm's fog. A little signal flare that says real humans are still here. Then, share this with one person you know who still asks questions instead of accepting the feed at face value. And if you've got a lead, an article, a document, a username, a weird coincidence that won't stop blinking, send it to thetinfoildiaries at gmail.com. I read every tip. Keep your eyes open. We're watching for the pattern. If most of what you see online is engineered to make you react, how many of your opinions were ever actually yours?